Welcome back to another episode of the Breakthrough Bestie podcast. I am your host, Angela Brock, and I'm a money strategist for women who are ready to take control of their finances and build real wealth. What does that mean? I help you change how you handle your money so that you can stop feeling stuck and start seeing some real financial progress. So, we are continuing the series on money identity and decision fatigue. So, if you haven't watched any of the other previous videos in this particular series, I encourage you to go back and take a listen. So, listen, there is a point where your relationship with money stops feeling external and starts feeling real personal. It's not an emotional experience anymore. It's not stressful. It's just personal. You stop seeing it as something that you are trying to stay on top of and start seeing it as something that you are directing. And that shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Identity doesn't change in one dramatic moment. It changes in quieter ways. You start noticing things sooner. You start understanding things faster. And then you start making decisions with less hesitation. And it's not because you're forcing a new behavior, but because simply your perspective has now changed. And that perspective drives behavior automatically. You think of it this way. There's a difference, right, between walking into an environment that you know well and walking into one that you've never experienced before. When you enter into like an unfamiliar environment, you naturally observe more. You take in your surroundings. You move more intentionally. You allow yourself to understand where you are, not because something is wrong, but because familiarity hasn't formed just yet. Now, in contrast, I want you to think about an environment where you feel completely comfortable, right? You don't question your presence. You don't second guess your movement. You operate naturally within it, like you're just flowing, right? Confidence exists there without any effort. And it's not because it's something that you have to think about, not because you have to force it, but because familiarity made it natural. And your financial life follows a similar pattern. As familiarity increases, your confidence follows, not through effort, but through integration. Does that make sense? Think about learning a skill that once felt unfamiliar. Listen, let me tell you something. Even when I started this podcast, when I first started, like it just felt so daunting, right? And I had a lack of confidence. I think in this series, we've talked about driving, leading, starting a podcast, learning a new program, budgeting, right? Managing something that once felt new. At first, everything is going to require your attention, but over time, it becomes part of how you operate. And not because the responsibility for overseeing that thing disappeared, but because your identity expanded to include it. Your money is going to work the same way. It stops feeling like something separate from you and it becomes something that's integrated in how you operate, how you think, how you move. When identity shifts, consistency stops requiring effort. Not because discipline all of a sudden just goes out the window, but because alignment replaces the resistance. You don't need reminders to engage with something that feels familiar. Engagement becomes part of your normal awareness. Think about your relationships, think about your friendships, right? In the beginning, you have to be intentional with how you reach out and nurturing that relationship. But over time, when there's alignment, when there is integration, you don't need reminders to reach out to your friends. You don't need reminders to check in with your boo, right? That engagement is because of the familiarity, right? That's where the stability forms. And it's not through an intensity, but it's through integration. Think about the first time that you stepped into a leadership role. You were aware of yourself, you were aware of your decisions, and over time, that awareness faded into confidence, right? You weren't second guessing everything that you did, all the emails that you had to send, the team's messages. Should I reach out? Should I not? How should I say this, right? Over time, that level of awareness faded into confidence, right? Not because the weightiness of the responsibility changed, but because you became more familiar with operating in that role. Yes, financial identity develops the same way through familiarity, through integration, through experience. At this point, something has already started to shift within you. You are starting to see things differently. You're noticing things sooner, especially if you've been following along in this series, right? You're relating to your financial life with much more awareness, not because I or someone forced yourself to change, but because familiarity started forming, and familiarity changes how you show up. So here is your anchor. Identity doesn't shift through effort, it shifts through familiarity. And once your financial life becomes familiar territory, confidence stops being something that you try to create and becomes something that you naturally experience. And honestly, it just becomes who you are. So, if this video helped you to see your money differently, subscribe so that you can continue building habits that lead to real financial wealth. Remember two things. One, breakthrough starts when you decide to take control. And then two, wealth isn't built by accident, it is built by the decisions that you make today. I'll see you next time.